The Lone Lumberjack Who Bought a Slave, but what he freed changed the galaxy. Rafe Morgan hated border bazaars. The noise, the smells, the crush of bodies with too many elbows and not enough manners. Words slammed into him from every stall, half of them in languages his ear implant refused to translate. He kept moving. He needed one thing only, a new plasma saw. His old one had died in the middle of a salvage job, deep out where no help ever came. Out here, tools meant life. The world was outpost Kestrel, a dust moon windy and cruel. Tin roofs rattled. Sand hissed over solar panels. Bounty hunters drank under faded lights. Rafe wore a dark canvas jacket and heavy boots scarred white with salt. He walked like a man who had learned to look behind him. Human, a voice piped from a stall. Strong hands need strong tool. He turned. A short trader stood on a box to meet his eyes. Smooth green skin, narrow mouth, a patched cloak. The sign above him blinked. Krell's Emporium, fair deals. Rafe did not believe in fair deals, but he stepped closer anyway. Industrial plasma saw, Rafe said. No junk, I'm working today. Krell's lips tried to smile. Better than saw. I give you better. He tapped a corner of the stall with a claw. There, half hidden in shadow, a small figure knelt. A rough sack covered head and shoulders. Hands bound, clothes like rags. The figure trembled. Rafe's jaw went hard. What is that? Gremlin thrall, Krell said, casual as dust. Rare, works long. No complaint. Takes orders. Cheaper than tool in the long run. I don't buy people, Rafe said. His voice came out flat and cold. People? Krell clicked his tongue. Asset, good asset, special. He nudged the figure with his foot. The figure flinched fast and scared. Rafe should have walked away. He had walked away from many things, but the flinch burned in his mind. He had fought in the ship lanes once. He had seen collars. He had cut some. He still woke at night hearing the beeps. How much, he asked, hating the words. Krell's eyes gleamed. 3 moons' work. 1, Rafe said at once. And you throw in a basic saw. Krell squealed and argued and lied. Rafe stood like a wall. 15 minutes later, he left the stall poorer, angrier, and with a crate that held a cheap saw, and a rope that led a silent, shaking shape. The trip across the market was tight and ugly. Voices followed him, laughter. A bottle cracked somewhere. Rafe kept his eyes forward and his hands open. At the edge of the bazaar, his rover waited, a low 6-wheeled mule with cracked paint and a loyal engine. He helped the bound figure onto the rear bench, set the motor humming, and drove for the hills. Wind chased them. Red grit scratched his cheeks. The sack moved now and then. Little sounds came from under it. Rafe said nothing. He stared at the path and at the horizon where thin towers of rock stabbed the sky. After an hour, the rover bumped into a canyon mouth and slipped into shade. Ahead, built into stone, sat Rafe's place. A narrow door, a power coil, a small dish, and a chimney ghosting thin smoke. Home, if the word still fit. Inside, the light was warm. A heater hummed. The air smelled like tea and metal. Rafe closed the door and cut the rope with a knife. He spoke in a steady tone that he had practiced for years. I'm going to take it off. I won't hurt you. The figure shook. Rafe loosened the knot. He lifted the sack. He forgot to breathe. Beneath the grime, the person was no gremlin. She was a woman. Humanoid, yes, but not human. Her skin held a soft sea-green glow in the room's light. Her eyes were large and amber, bright with fear. A shimmer of silver-white hair clung to her brow like fine thread. A thin metal collar circled her neck. Tiny lights blinked in a rhythm that felt wrong. She pressed back against the wall, hands still bound, chest rising quick and shallow. Rafe raised both palms. Easy. He set the knife on the table, handle toward her. No harm. She watched his hands. She watched the door. She watched every path out of the room. Rafe moved slow, like approaching a spooked animal, and cut the ropes at her wrists. The marks on her skin were deep and raw. She rubbed them, eyes never leaving his face. My name is Rafe, he said, touching his chest. Rafe Morgan, silence. Then soft as wind through glass, she spoke. Sarah, she said. I am Sarah Lynn. Her standard was clear. Not translation field clear. Learned clear. She looked at the plate on the counter. He followed her gaze. Tea, bread, a pan of eggs he had left on warm before the trip. Hungry? He asked. She hesitated. For my kind. Is this safe? We'll test, he said. He tore a piece of bread, dipped it, tasted it, waited. See, try a little. She took a tiny bite. Color seemed to come back to her face. She ate more. They sat. The heater ticked. Outside wind combed the canyon. At last, Rafe asked the question that had lived in his throat since the market. How did you end up with that trader? Sarah's hand rose to the collar. The lights blinked, patient and cruel. Raiders, she said. My ship was taken. Then I was sold twice, she lowered her eyes. The last one hid me under a sack. He called me cursed. He feared what he did not understand. What don't they understand? She met his gaze. Fear still lived there, but something else now. A measure, a test. My people touch minds, she said. We feel what others feel. Sometimes we reach deeper. She paused. This is why some would keep us. Rafe stared at the collar. He could almost hear it ticking like a trap set under floorboards. How long? 3 standard months. Rafe felt his jaw clench. Old anger woke in his bones. He had left the fleet to avoid this kind of fight, but it always found him. He reached across the table and stopped his hand a breath from hers. We'll get that off, he said. We'll find your people. You're not property here. Sarah looked at his hand. After a long heartbeat, she laid her palm on his. A warm, strange tingle ran up his arm like static and sunlight. Her voice was a whisper. Humans are said to be dangerous. He managed a thin smile. Only to those who chain others. Outside, the wind rose. Somewhere far off, a thin, distant thrum answered the collar's blink. Rafe did not hear it yet. But trouble was already moving. And the quiet man in the canyon had just chosen a side. Morning light crept through the cracks in the shutters, painting pale lines across the wooden floor. Rafe Morgan stood at the small stove, stirring a pot of coffee that hissed like a tired machine. Behind him, the woman, Sarah, sat wrapped in a blanket he'd found in an old crate. She hadn't spoken much since the night before, but she watched everything. Her eyes, those golden alien eyes, missed nothing. Sleep any? Rafe asked, keeping his voice casual. A little, she said softly. Her voice was smooth, almost musical, but it carried something heavy under the tone. Fear, exhaustion, maybe both. He poured 2 cups. You can drink this, no poison. I checked. That earned the smallest smile from her. She took the mug carefully, holding it with both hands as though it might vanish. The steam fogged the air between them. For a while, neither spoke. Rafe stared at the collar around her neck. The small blinking lights looked harmless, but he'd seen enough tech to know that nothing with blinking lights was ever harmless. He nodded toward it. That thing hurts you? She shook her head. Not directly. It limits me, blocks my mind. My kind need connection to others, to our network, to our home. Without it, silence grows. Like cutting a signal? Yes, she said quietly. Exactly that, Rafe frowned. Who did this? The Raiders, she said. But I think they worked for someone larger. Someone who knew what I am. And what are you exactly? Sarah looked up, the faint morning light catching the silver shimmer of her hair. A Lumaran empath. My people can sense emotions. Some can even shape them, but I am different. How different? I can reach deeper, she said. Memories, thoughts. I can touch the mind itself. Rafe leaned against the counter, thinking. That's why they kept you in a sack. Sarah nodded. They were afraid. My presence unsettles those who hide lies. Guess that makes you dangerous, he said, half smiling. She tilted her head. You don't seem afraid. I've seen worse than truth. A faint beeping broke the quiet. Rafe turned toward the table. His old comm unit was flashing, trying to connect. He frowned, crossed the room, and tapped the screen. Static filled the air, followed by a low rhythmic pulse. That's not from me, he muttered. Sarah stiffened. Her eyes widened, and her hand went to the collar. The lights were blinking faster now. It's sending a signal. Rafe cursed under his breath. A tracker? Maybe, or a call. I don't know which is worse. He grabbed his toolkit from the wall. Then we cut it off. No, she cried, stepping back. If you damage it wrong, it will release a charge. Enough to stop my heart. Rafe froze, then exhaled sharply. Of course it would. He looked around the cabin. Nothing advanced enough to disable alien tech. The only real tools he had were for cutting wood, not precision work. Can you shut it down from your side? She closed her eyes, touching the metal. For a moment, her face tightened, then relaxed. No, it blocks every signal I try to send. She opened her eyes again, voice trembling. It's calling them. Rafe ran a hand through his hair. He'd hoped his quiet years on Kestrel were enough to bury his past. But old instincts, the soldier, the survivor, woke up fast. Then we leave, he said. Now, Sarah hesitated. You'd risk that? For me, he met her eyes. You're not a thing to be hunted. You're a person. That's enough, they packed fast. Rafe loaded water, rations, a pulse pistol that still worked, and a few data slates into a rough satchel. Sarah followed, quiet but alert, her gaze flicking toward the window every few seconds as though expecting shadows to move. Outside, the canyon wind had turned sharper, colder. The rover hummed to life, kicking up dust as they rolled out toward the open flats. The horizon shimmered under the rising sun, endless and empty. For a long time, they drove in silence. The hum of the engine and the crunch of gravel were the only sounds. Then Sarah spoke almost to herself. When they took me, we were near the outer belt. My father's ship, he was carrying an agreement between the Lumeran Conclave and the Human Federation. A peace treaty. They wanted it destroyed. Rafe's grip tightened on the wheel. So they hit your ship, took you, and made it look like your people vanished. She nodded. Without me, the talks collapsed. And if they find me again, they'll make sure the treaty never happens, he finished. The rover jolted over a ridge. Rafe checked the scanner on his console. Its screen flickered weakly. 2 signatures behind us, he said. Fast ones, Sarah's hand trembled. They've found the signal. Hang on, Rafe said, slamming the throttle forward. The rover roared over the rocks, engines straining. Behind them, faint dots appeared on the horizon, craft skimming the sand. Too fast to outrun. The wind tore through the open vents. Dust burned his eyes. Rafe glanced at the scanner again. If we reach the old mining shafts, we can lose them underground. Will they follow? Maybe. But it's our only chance. She gripped the seat as the rover bounced across uneven ground. Why help me, Rafe? You could have left me there, he didn't answer right away. The canyon walls loomed ahead, closing like a trap. Because I've been where you are, he finally said. And someone once didn't leave me. The roar behind them grew louder. Twin flashes of light streaked across the sky, warning shots. The hunters were close. Rafe gunned the engine. The rover shot into the mouth of the canyon, the cliff swallowing them in shadow. Hold tight, he shouted. If this works, they'll lose us. Sarah closed her eyes. The collar lights pulsed faster as if sensing danger. For the first time since he'd met her, she reached for his arm. If they find us, she whispered, don't let them take me alive. Rafe looked at her, and for a moment he saw not an alien, not a prisoner, but someone trying desperately to hold on to freedom. He nodded once. They won't. The rover plunged into darkness and the hunter's engine screamed closer, echoing through the canyon walls. The chase had begun. The tunnels swallowed them whole. Rafe killed the rover's lights the moment they entered, letting only the dull glow from the dashboard guide them. Dust swirled like ghosts in the beam. The engine echoed off the stone walls, a hollow growl that sounded too loud in the silence of the old mining shafts. Can they follow us down here? Sarah asked, her voice tight. They'll try, Rafe said, steering carefully through the narrow passage. But these tunnels twist for kilometers. If we keep moving, we'll lose their scanners. She gripped the seat, staring into the dark. This place feels wrong, like something's still alive here. It's the mines, he said. They use drones, plasma drills, seismic charge bots. Some of that stuff still hums when you walk by it. Power ghosts. A loud crack echoed through the tunnel, rock settling. Sarah flinched. Rafe kept driving, though his heart thudded in his chest. He'd been in worse holes during the war, but never with a living alien beside him whose very presence might attract hunters across a star system. After a few minutes, he slowed and parked the rover in a wider chamber where the tunnel split 3 ways. We'll stop here for a bit, he said. They'll have trouble scanning past the iron deposits in the walls. Sarah climbed out, her bare feet silent on the rock. The soft bioluminescence of her skin painted the darkness around her in faint green light. It was strange, beautiful almost, and it made Rafe forget for a moment that they were being hunted. She touched one of the tunnel walls, her fingers trembling. This place remembers pain, she whispered. Machines tore into the planet. The echoes still linger. Rafe crouched by the rover, checking the small energy meter. You can feel that? She nodded. Everything leaves traces in the mind space. Emotion, memory, fear. Her eyes flicked toward him. You feel it too, don't you? Not like I do, but you carry your own ghosts. He didn't answer. Instead, he checked his weapon, old instincts tightening his focus. We'll need to move again soon, he said. Once they realize they've lost the signal, they'll come down here. Sarah walked closer, the soft glow around her reflecting off his face. If the collar is sending a beacon, can we turn it against them? Rafe looked up. What do you mean? They're tracking me through it, she said. But if we could redirect the signal, make it stronger somewhere else, they'd go the wrong way. He thought about that. The old control rooms in these tunnels had power lines and transmitters that still worked in bursts. If he could wire the collar's signal into one of those, maybe the hunters would follow a ghost deeper into the mines. You might be onto something, he said. There's a generator hub about half a kilometer east. If we can reach it, I can rig a loop signal. She smiled faintly. Then we make them chase shadows. They packed fast, carrying what little they had. Rafe led, pulse rifle raised. The tunnels narrowed and widened unpredictably, forcing them to squeeze through rusted doors and crawl over fallen pipes. Every sound seemed magnified, the scrape of boots, the drip of water, the distant echo of engines above. As they walked, Sarah began to hum. A low, haunting melody that didn't sound human. The vibration of it rolled through the stone, calming and strange. What's that? Rafe asked quietly. It's a focus tone, she said. It steadies my mind, helps me reach past the collar's barrier. Does it work? Her eyes glowed softly in the dark. It's starting to. When they reached the generator hub, Rafe set down his pack. The chamber was large, with old machinery rising like skeletons in the gloom. He brushed dust from a control panel and connected a small cable from the rover's toolkit. If this still holds a charge, I can trick the collar into thinking the signal's coming from here instead of you. Sarah knelt beside him. What do you need me to do? Stay still. Don't touch anything metal. He started working, hands steady, eyes scanning the flickering readouts. Power flickered weakly through the ancient circuits. Sparks danced as he rerouted wires and forced the signal amplifier online. Almost there, he murmured, but then a sharp pulse came from the collar. Sarah gasped, clutching her throat. The lights on the band flashed red. Rafe, it's reacting. Hold on. He grabbed a pair of insulated pliers and yanked a cable from the wall. Electricity arced, the smell of ozone filling the air. The collar's red lights turned amber, then dimmed. The hum of the machines changed pitch. A deep, steady tone filled the room, low and rhythmic like a heartbeat echoing through stone. Sarah looked up, eyes wide. You did it. It's broadcasting. Rafe checked the scanner. Signals bouncing down tunnel. If they're tracking you, they'll head straight for the wrong end. He allowed himself a small, tired grin. That should buy us a few hours. Sarah's gaze softened. You are good at surviving, Rafe Morgan. Not good, he said, packing up the tools. Just practiced. But before they could leave, a faint metallic sound echoed through the tunnels. Footsteps. Not echoes. Not rock. Sarah's expression shifted instantly. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. They're near, she whispered. 3 minds focused cold. Hunters, Rafe muttered. He extinguished the console lights and crouched low. We can't stay here. Sarah opened her eyes again, glowing faintly in the dark. They think I'm deeper inside, she said. Your trick worked, but one of them feels uncertain, suspicious. Rafe gestured toward a smaller side tunnel. Then we move before they change their minds. They slipped into the narrow passage, their footsteps muffled on the soft dust. Behind them, faint voices spoke in a language neither of them fully understood. Sarah leaned close as they hurried through the dark. If they find us, they won't take me alive. I won't let that happen, Rafe said, keeping his eyes forward. For a moment, their hands brushed. It wasn't planned, just instinct, a human reflex born of danger. But in that single touch, Sarah felt the sharp edge of his fear, his determination, and something else. Hope. Rafe, she whispered, you don't have to save me. Maybe not, he said. But I'm going to anyway. The tunnel curved sharply, opening into another chamber lined with collapsed scaffolding and the remains of a long-dead control station. They paused, catching their breath, both listening to the fading echoes behind them. The hunters were getting closer. Rafe scanned the walls for exits, his pulse steady, his mind already planning the next move. We'll have to fight soon, he said quietly. And when we do, stay behind me. Sarah's eyes glowed brighter now and her voice was calm. If it comes to that, Rafe Morgan, she said, you might find I'm not as helpless as I look. The sound of metallic boots echoed closer, bouncing off the stone. Rafe looked at her, and for the first time since this began, he believed her. The hunt was far from over. The air in the tunnels had grown colder, heavier. Every sound carried like a warning. Rafe moved first, pulse rifle ready, eyes scanning the darkness ahead. Sarah followed silently, her light footsteps ghosting over the dust. Behind them, echoes of motion whispered through the stone, metallic, measured, too precise to be natural. "They're close," she said softly. "One of them can sense me." "He's trained for this." Rafe's grip tightened. "Dravari?" "Yes," she whispered. "Elite ones. They were the ones who raided my ship." Rafe cursed under his breath. He had heard of the Dravari Imperium, a species that lived for conquest, disciplined and cold. During his military days, he'd seen the aftermath of their work. Colonies burned, civilians vanished. They didn't chase people, they erased them. They reached an old cargo junction, an intersection where rails crisscrossed like veins. Abandoned mining carts sat rusting in place, their once shiny alloys dulled by decades of dust. Rafe crouched beside one, running a hand across the corroded surface. "We can use this," he said. "If we overload the cell, it'll blow hard enough to block the tunnel behind us." Sarah looked uneasy. "And if it collapses on us? Then we find another way out." He gave a grim smile. "That's the fun part." She watched him work, his movements quick, efficient, born of habit. She had seen soldiers before, but never one like him. There was no pride in how he handled his weapon or tools, only focus. Only purpose. "Why did you leave your people?" she asked suddenly. He didn't look up. "You mean the military?" "Yes, you fight like one who's seen too much war." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Because I got tired of being told who to kill and who to save." The mining cart began to hum softly, power cells recharging as he bypassed safety circuits. "Sometimes," he added, "it's hard to tell the difference." Sarah looked down at her glowing hands. "And yet you still saved me." "That's different," he said. Before she could answer, a sound cut through the air, sharp, metallic, close. Footsteps slow, deliberate. Rafe killed the tool's light. The darkness closed around them. Sarah's eyes flickered faintly, casting a weak green glow. "He's near," she whispered. One mind, focused, controlled. Rafe's jaw tightened. "Stay low." A shadow moved between the broken machinery, tall, armored, and silent. The shape of a Dravari shadow hunter. Its armor absorbed light, making it seem half-transparent in the dark. Only the faint red gleam of its visor betrayed it. The alien's voice came through a filtered mask, calm, almost gentle. "Human, you cannot win. Surrender the empath and your death will be painless." Rafe aimed the rifle, whispering, "I've heard that one before." The shadow hunter moved faster than he expected, a blur of motion. Rafe fired once, the blue bolt glancing off the armor, leaving only a scorch mark. The alien closed the distance in a heartbeat, drawing a short plasma blade that hummed with deadly light. Rafe barely dodged the swing, rolling behind the cart. Sparks burst as the blade carved into metal. The alien's voice came again, colder. "Predictable, primitive, human. Yeah?" Rafe grunted, slamming his hand down on the detonator. The mining cart erupted in a deafening blast. The shockwave hurled both Rafe and the Dravari backward. Rocks crashed from above, sealing part of the tunnel in flame and dust. When the ringing in his ears faded, Rafe coughed and pushed himself up. The alien was down. Not dead, but stunned, armor cracked. Sarah knelt beside him, her hand glowing faintly. "He's alive," she whispered. Rafe pointed the rifle at the fallen Dravari. "Not for long." "Wait," she said. "We can learn from him." Rafe frowned. "You want to talk to it?" She shook her head. "Not talk." She reached out, pressing her fingertips to the Dravari's forehead. Her glow brightened, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Her eyes rolled back as her voice dropped to a whisper. "He's seen the plan. The reason they took me." "What reason?" Her brow furrowed, her voice shaking. "They wanted to stop the treaty between humans and my people. But more, they're preparing something. A coordinated strike on the frontier worlds. 3 colonies, within 1 standard month." Rafe felt the weight of her words hit like a hammer. "A war," she nodded weakly. "They planted data in my collar and false evidence, to make it look like the Lumeran Conclave was spying on the Federation. When humans discover it, they'll turn against us. The Dravari won't need to fire a single shot." Rafe stared down at the alien. "Manipulative bastards." The Dravari twitched, his voice barely audible. "You cannot stop it. Human." Rafe silenced him with the butt of his rifle, knocking him out cold. He turned to Sarah. "We can use that data. Expose them. Her gaze was sharp now, focused. Then we must keep it safe. The collar holds everything. But if I try to remove it, it could kill you, he finished. The tension between them hung heavy. Finally, he said, "We'll find someone who can take it off safely. I know a place, an outpost 2 days' ride east. There's an old engineer there who owes me." Sarah looked down at the unconscious Dravari. What about him? Rafe checked the alien's belt and found a small device, a communicator and a tracking chip linked to her collar. He smashed them under his boot. He'll wake up in the dark without his friends. She smiled faintly. Humans really are dangerous, he grinned. Only when we have to be. They left the tunnel behind, following a narrow passage that led upward. The air grew fresher with every step, the faint scent of ozone and open wind returning. But before they reached the surface, Sarah stopped suddenly, her eyes wide. "What is it?" Rafe asked. Her voice trembled. "Another presence, strong, searching for me. It feels different." "Another hunter?" "No." She shook her head slowly. "Someone else, someone familiar." Rafe frowned. "You mean one of your kind?" She nodded, eyes distant. "If it is truly him, then my father's guard is already here." The realization hit them both at once. If Sarah's people were close, so were the Dravari. Neither side would risk open combat here, not yet. But the moment the collar transmitted again, the war she'd described might begin. Rafe adjusted the strap on his rifle and nodded toward the light, breaking through the upper rocks. "Then let's move. We'll find this engineer before anyone else finds us." Sarah followed, glancing once back toward the tunnels below, where the faint mechanical hiss of breathing still echoed. The shadow hunters were not done, and somewhere in the dark another pair of crimson eyes opened. The desert stretched endless and cruel. The twin suns of Kestrel burned high, turning the horizon into a blur of gold and blood-red dust. Rafe's rover climbed over dunes like a wounded beast, its engine whining with every rise. The explosion in the mines had damaged a stabilizer, and the ride was rough, but it was still moving. Barely. Sarah sat beside him, wrapped in a scavenged cloak. Her gaze followed the shimmering air ahead, though her thoughts were far away. The collar on her neck pulsed faintly every few seconds, like a heartbeat out of sync. "How far?" she asked quietly. "Half a day, maybe less," Rafe said. "Outpost 17, old mining station turned trade hub. An engineer there named Holt used to work military systems. If anyone can get that thing off you without killing you, it's him." She nodded, her fingers brushing the collar as though trying to soothe it. "It grows restless," she murmured. "Like it knows we're trying to end it." Rafe glanced at her. "Let's make sure it doesn't get the chance." They drove in silence for a while, the rover's tires carving long scars into the dust. The landscape looked empty, but Rafe knew better. Kestrel's wastelands had eyes. Raiders, hunters, and worse things that waited until nightfall. Sarah broke the silence. "You fought in the colonial wars, didn't you?" Rafe didn't look at her. "Yeah. Did you believe in it?" He exhaled slowly. "At first, I thought we were protecting something worth saving. Then I realized we were just protecting ownership. Who got to plant the flag where? And now?" He cracked a faint smile. "Now I just protect people who can't protect themselves." She studied him. "That's a rare kind of human." He shrugged. "Just stubborn, mostly." They reached the outpost by late afternoon, a sprawl of steel domes and scavenged solar panels half buried in sand. A few ships rested on the landing pads, scarred and patched from years of service. Smoke rose from a workshop near the far edge and exactly where Rafe expected to find Holt. "Stay close," he said, stepping out. "And keep that collar hidden." Sarah pulled the hood over her head, following him through the busy walkways. The air smelled of oil, metal, and old sweat. Traders argued over engine parts while children darted between storage crates. At the workshop entrance, Rafe knocked twice on the metal frame. "Holt, you in there?" A gruff voice called out. "Rafe Morgan." "I'll be damned. Thought you were dead." The man who emerged was tall and wiry, with a beard streaked in gray and goggles perched on his forehead. His coveralls were stained with grease and his cybernetic arm whirred softly as he wiped it on a rag. "Still breathing," Rafe said. "Need a favor?" Holt's eyes narrowed. "That usually means trouble." His gaze shifted to Sarah, then to the faint glimmer of metal around her throat. "And I'm guessing she's the favor?" Rafe nodded. "I need that thing off her safely." Holt whistled low. That's Dravari tech, military grade. You're lucky it hasn't fried her brain yet. Can you do it? Maybe. Holt scratched his chin. But I'll need to see the interface up close. And I'll need time. How much? Couple of hours if I'm careful. Rafe nodded. Do it. Sarah hesitated but then sat down on a chair beside the workbench. Holt approached slowly, scanning the collar with a handheld device that chirped nervously. He frowned. It's got layers, neural sync locks, micro-detonators, tracker nodes. Tracker, Rafe repeated. So it's still sending? Not right now, Holt said, but it's got a memory buffer. Once I open it, it'll ping whatever's listening. Rafe's gut tightened. Then we don't have long. Holt nodded grimly. You two hide out in my back room while I prep. Less eyes, less noise. They followed him through the narrow passage into a cluttered space filled with parts, wires, and old hollow screens. Rafe stood near the door, scanning the street through a small crack. Sarah sat on a crate, her hands clasped tightly. You don't trust him, she said. I don't trust anyone, Rafe replied, but Holt's the closest thing I've got to an ally on this rock. She tilted her head. He cares for you? He smirked. Cares for the credits I owe him, maybe. They waited. The minutes dragged by, each one stretching longer than the last. Then, suddenly, Sarah stiffened. Her eyes unfocused, staring into nothing. What is it? Rafe asked, stepping forward. Something wrong, she said slowly. The air feels sharp. There are mines moving outside, fast, too many. Rafe's hand went to his rifle. Dravari? She nodded, her voice trembling. They're here. Before Rafe could respond, the door burst open. Holt stumbled in, face pale. They surrounded the outpost, a whole drop team, Dravari commandos. Rafe grabbed his arm. How did they find us this fast? Holt looked down, ashamed. They didn't. They were already coming. Rafe froze. What do you mean? I called them. Holt's voice cracked. They paid me to report any off-world fugitives. I didn't know it was her, Rafe. I swear I didn't. For a heartbeat, the room went silent. Then Rafe slammed him against the wall, his fist pressed to Holt's throat. You sold us out, he hissed. I had no choice. They would have killed me. Bad choice, Rafe growled. Sarah stood, her hood falling back. Let him go, Rafe. It doesn't matter now. The sound of approaching boots and the hum of dropcraft engines filled the air outside. Rafe released Holt, who crumpled to the floor, gasping. You'd better pray you survive this, Rafe said darkly. He turned to Sarah. We need to move. Back door? Holt pointed shakily. Behind the generator stack, leads to the maintenance tunnels. They ran. Blaster fire cracked outside, shouts echoing through the outpost streets. Civilians scattered, alarms wailed. The metal walls shook under the weight of explosions. As they reached the back corridor, Sarah's collar flared bright crimson. She screamed, clutching her neck as sparks flew from the device. Rafe caught her before she fell. Sarah? Her voice was barely a whisper. They're trying to activate the failsafe. Through the signal. Stay with me, he said, pulling her toward the hatch. She opened her eyes, glowing brighter than ever before. I can fight it, but I'll need your mind. He didn't hesitate. Take it. Her hand shot up, pressing against his temple. A surge of energy flooded through him. Heat, light, emotion. Their thoughts collided in a blur of sound and color. For an instant, he saw her memories, her world of crystal skies, her father's voice, the fire of her capture. Then the light from the collar dimmed. The signal faltered. Sarah gasped and fell against him, weak but alive. It worked, she whispered. But they'll know where we are. Rafe tightened his hold on her, determination hardening his voice. Then we make sure they regret finding us. Outside, the first Dravari soldiers breached the workshop doors. Inside, Rafe loaded his rifle and looked at the trembling engineer. Time to even the odds. Holt swallowed hard. You can't win against them, Rafe. Rafe gave him a grim smile. Watch me. And with that, he stepped into the fire. The outpost was burning. The skies above Kestrel glowed with streaks of plasma fire as Dravari gunships descended through the dust clouds like predatory birds. Their searchlights sliced across the settlement, turning every hiding place into a trap. Rafe and Sarah darted between the shadows of metal structures, the roar of engines and the shriek of blaster fire following close behind. Everywhere they turned, people were running, some screaming, others fighting. But the Dravari were methodical. They weren't raiding. They were hunting. Rafe ducked behind a shattered cargo container, his pulse rifle humming softly. "They're locking down the exits," he muttered. "They'll close the net in minutes." Sarah leaned against the wall beside him, her breathing uneven. The collar still blinked faintly, pulsing red like a wound that wouldn't close. "I can sense them," she whispered. 5 minds, no, 6, focused. They're moving in formation. "Shadow hunters," Rafe said grimly. "They brought elites." Her amber eyes flicked toward him. "You fought them before?" "Once," he said. "It didn't go well." They both glanced toward the workshop in the distance. Holt's shop was in flames, explosions cracking through the metal walls. The old engineer was nowhere to be seen. Whether he'd fled or been taken, Rafe didn't know. "We can't stay here," he said, scanning the rooftops. "There's a maintenance lift on the north ridge. Leads into the cliffs. We get up there. Maybe we can reach your people's signal beacon." Sarah nodded weakly. "If I can contact them, they'll come for us." "Then that's our play." They moved fast, weaving through narrow alleys and broken corridors. Rafe's every step was measured, every corner cleared with military precision. Sarah followed close behind, her faint bioluminescence dimmed beneath her cloak. But the Dravari were faster. A sudden burst of gunfire lit up the street ahead, bright blue bolts tearing through the air. Rafe dove behind a pile of crates, returning fire with short, controlled bursts. The crack of plasma bolts echoed like thunder. Sarah pressed her back to the wall, hands trembling. "There are 3 of them, 2 in front, 1 moving behind." Rafe reloaded. "You can feel that?" She nodded. "Their minds are cold, sharp, but one of them hesitates." "Good," Rafe said. "Let's use that." He waited for a break in the firing, then sprinted across the street, rolling behind another container. "Sarah, stay low," he shouted. But before he could fire again, a dark figure dropped from above, a Dravari in sleek black armor landing with the weight of a machine. The alien's blade ignited in a shimmer of violet light. Rafe barely blocked the first strike with his rifle. Sparks flew as metal clashed with plasma. The Dravari moved with inhuman speed, forcing Rafe backward with every swing. "You cannot protect her," the alien hissed through his modulator. "Not trying to protect," Rafe grunted, parrying another blow. "Just trying to kill you first." He ducked low and slammed the butt of his rifle into the Dravari's knee joint. The alien staggered for a fraction of a second, enough for Rafe to fire point blank into the armor's side. The plasma bolt burned through plating, and the Dravari let out a guttural snarl before collapsing. Sarah rushed forward, her hands glowing faintly as she touched Rafe's arm. "You're hurt." He glanced down, a shallow cut across his shoulder, sizzling from the blade's heat. "Just a scratch." More footsteps thundered from the east. Rafe grabbed her hand. "We're moving now." They sprinted through the maze of burning streets. Overhead, gunships circled, their searchlights sweeping the ground. Rafe spotted the North Ridge lift ahead, half collapsed but still functional. "Go!" he yelled. Sarah jumped onto the platform and hit the activation panel. The lift groaned to life, rising slowly toward the cliffs above. Rafe fired behind them, holding off the approaching soldiers. Plasma bolts slammed into the walls beside him, showering sparks. One shot grazed his side, searing pain ripping through him. He gritted his teeth and kept firing until the last Dravari fell. Then he stumbled onto the lift, barely catching the railing as it climbed. Sarah turned toward him, panic in her eyes. "You're bleeding." "I've had worse," he said through clenched teeth. Below them, the outpost burned like a dying sun. The flames reflected in Sarah's eyes, and for a moment, she looked both terrified and determined. "They'll come after us," she said. "They won't stop." "They'll try," Rafe muttered, loading another power cell into his rifle. But we're not done yet. When the lift reached the top, they stepped onto the ridge, a flat plateau overlooking miles of desert. The wind screamed across the stone, carrying sand like knives. In the distance, something shimmered, a cluster of glowing spires half buried in the dunes. Sarah's breath caught. "That's it," she whispered. "A Lumaran relay beacon. If I can reach it, I can contact my father's fleet." "Then that's our finish line," Rafe said. They started toward it, the wind tearing at their clothes. Rafe's vision blurred for a moment from blood loss, but he forced himself forward. Sarah stayed close, her hand brushing his arm now and then, a silent reminder that they were still alive. But the reprieve was brief. A dark shape swept across the sky. Another gunship, its engines roaring as it turned sharply toward them. Rafe shoved Sarah down behind a rock. "They found us." The ship fired. Plasma rounds scorched the sand, exploding into molten glass. The ground shook violently. Rafe raised his rifle, sighted the exposed vent beneath the gunship's hull, and fired 3 rapid shots. The first missed. The second scorched the metal. The third hit true. The gunship spun out of control, belching smoke as it crashed into the dunes with a deafening boom. Sarah stared at the wreckage, eyes wide. "You destroyed it?" Rafe allowed himself a small grin. "Guess I still remember how to aim."